65 to 70 was unbelievably creative period. There's these 5-year periods. They have them where athletes too. I mean, you had Aladar and Affirmed and Spectacular Bid. You had these great horses in a small compressed period of time. You had great jazz, and for some reason, it doesn't continue. It's not evenly spaced. Right now, there's probably some guy with a sketch pad in Binghamton that has some great ideas, that doesn't know what to do. There's some person that can sing that doesn't think they can sing. Creativity is this simple. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't care what anybody thinks. That's the artist. That breaking new ground, constantly breaking new ground, not going over the same stuff. We need a looser society. We need a much looser society in a lot of ways. What's happening to the underclass is very disturbing. The service business is interesting because it's ephemeral. You're dealing a hand of blackjack. You're only as good as your smile and how congenial you are with the customer. The most distressing thing, we're losing our gathering places. We're losing our social, once upon a time you'd run into people at the video store, right? So that was a good place to see them, especially if they had a tape that was hot. You say, geez, I knew that guy was a pervert. But you would see people at the videos. Now you're limited to like grocery store, athletics. You may run into athletics, some show or something. But you don't have that mingling where you can unexpectedly run into people, and we're losing those spots, and those spots are vital. They're really necessary for socialization. All creatures, great and small, and isn't it amazing? In the Lord's eyes, we're all it's these tremendous accomplishments that people have, and all the dough and everything else. And at the end of the day, we're going to be judged on factors that have nothing to do with that. Like if I was to do a TED Talk, can you imagine that? People would leave. It'd be the end of TED Talks.
And now, here's part 2 of our conversation with John Solak.
Everybody knows the garage stories, Hewlett-Packard, Steve Jobs. Everybody knows the dorm stories, Zuckerberg, Michael Dell. When things become too structured, they become non-creative. Creativity is this simple. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't care what anybody thinks. That's the artist. That breaking new ground, constantly breaking new ground, not going over the same stuff. And that used to happen all the time. One of the greatest people that I met, the Steve Jobs of his time, and he could have been in that league. One day, I skipped school, took my mother's car. I was about 16 or 17, and I went up to Trumansburg. And I met Bob Moog, the creator of the synthesizer, who was in business in Trumansburg. And he was selling an ancillary piece of equipment at the time. He went into, and it was a small production run, a mixer. And I was in awe of this guy, because this was after Switched On Bach. The synthesizer was just being, he was getting $8,000 or $9,000. I think the Byrds ordered, Jim McGuinn ordered one, and some people in England ordered. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, those guys. So he had sold about 5 or 6 of them, 7 of them. And, here he had this shop. And he had maybe 6, 7 people. He had 2 or 3 floors in downtown Trumansburg. And I was starstruck. I mean, this guy had it all to me. I mean, he was a world-renowned figure, self-financed. His wife, I guess, had a job at the Trumansburg school teaching. And, it was, I look back, I thought about it the other day. I didn't think about it. I said, I met that guy, and it was just a great experience because he was a real entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The people that work for him, I mean, we look, we can be the best here, Macintosh Labs, we got them from the Beltway, and they never went back. Publicly traded company, very few people before the Japanese bought it, traded on the pink sheets. And that's another thing that I want to tell you about. In order to be a successful economic county, you have to have publicly traded companies, headquartered. We had a bank. Elmira still got a couple. When you lose, Corning, obviously.
Do we have any?
No.
We used to have like one up in Kirkwood maybe, but
Semiconductor laser.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a pink sheet. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you lose that,
point.
Shenango County they've got the bank, and they've got, I think they have. I don't know if GE bought the.
But Maine's is private.
Yeah. You have to have the headquarters. That's your bragging right.
And
Headquarters.
that's why IBM was so good.
Well, yeah. Well, IBM wasn't headquartered here, but it was, it was a de facto headquarters in a way. Although some of those books about the Watsons indicate that they were never too keen on Endicott, So that was the thing. But no, that you need I mean, Chobani's a private company, but it's world renowned, and that's just you. I mean, if that happened here, you would have never heard the end of it, and you shouldn't, because people there are millionaires, ordinary people.
Yeah.
I'll give you another one. What's that? Rupert Stewart's? No, not Stewart. What's in Saratoga there?
Stewart Shops.
Yeah. Now, if you started with them 25 years ago in the store, their 401k, this is $1.5 million.
Yeah.
So this, if the employers are generous, if they.
Well, I know someone like Modern Marketing.
Yeah.
I believe they have an ESOP.
Yeah.
Which is great, and they tend to retain their employees, and they could grow, and they could earn a nice living. And you're right. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Our area doesn't have much of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what you need. You need.
How do we attract it?
Well, I think we're attracting the wrong types of businesses now, and this is a disaster. We had fracking. We didn't get involved in fracking, but that's a problematic business. Now the problem with that is that the financial muscle, these companies are failing. I followed that industry a long time before fracking, and the fracking companies themselves, the gas companies, the gas drilling companies were the poor stepchilds of the oil companies, and they were penny stocks. And now they're reverting back to being penny stocks again, and they're in serious trouble. So that ship is left, and the money that was available, the front money, will never occur again. So that was a one-time thing. But now we're going into these, and a lot of these are land burning, windmills, solar, and it's being done willy-nilly, and it's being done without the consequences that see, what we had here is we had a lot of land that went undeveloped because of local governments, perk tests, and all this kind of crazy stuff, that they wouldn't let people come in and use their land for the best purpose. So we had all this land that's just sitting there. Some of it's being logged, and now they're coming up with schemes, and it's burning land, and it's burning in the wrong way. Now, you want to talk about a problematic business? Hemp. A complete problematic business. And we're going full tilt boogie into hemp.
And why is it problematic?
Well, it's problematic because you have the issue of hot hemp versus hemp. You have, look, I give the people at Canopy Growth, they're at least telling the straight story. They're a recreational marijuana company. They're not, in other words, guys like Matt Ryan and Don Lepar say, clothing, we're all going to wear these ponchos like they do in Ecuador, made of hemp. Give me a break. It's and it's wasting the agricultural potential because people are chasing this hemp, and the seeds are expensive, and there's a lot of complications to the business, and everybody and their brother is in the hemp business now, and the processors know this. They know that they're trying to control it from all ends, and look, it creates a cowboy mentality because it's unregulated. So it's just a matter of time before farmers say, throw some hot hemp, throw some cannabis into the mixture here, and we'll do a Thunder Road type deal. So it's not well thought out. It's just, it's terrible.
The Wild West.
Yeah. Look, does government? Government finds out about things that are occurring, and boy, they ruin it. The problem with downtown, the problem with this millennial experiential stuff is, number one, it's long in the tooth, but number two, it's not high value added. Can I have a wine list? Oh yes, give me a wine list. Yes, I want to pay 5 times the markup at my local store. I love that wine.
Yeah.
I remember that wine. Can you give me one of those cocktails, a hot toddy? I look like a guy that needs a hot toddy. Give me a hot toddy at 1,000% markup. So these are not a lot of value things. We've lost a lot of.
And you're saying the thought's just not going into it? Like, well, what's the problem?
Well,
at that level, even.
Well, people that enter the restaurant business now, family restaurant businesses are great businesses.
Cortese.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 50 years, 60
Little
years,
Venice.
70 years. Yeah. And those are great businesses. Oaks Inn. You won't. Price should be no. They'll probably raise their prices now, but price should be no object when you enter the Oaks Inn, because everything is perfection plus. So. And they don't. Nobody really touts.
You will not be disappointed. You're saying.
Yeah,
when
but
you walk
nobody
up.
touts them. They know what they're doing.
Right.
In other words.
Right.
Now, a lot of people, since the advent of all this cable TV stuff, want to go into the restaurant business. I had a next door neighbor that went to 40, 45 years. She went to culinary school. And the problem, I never was attracted to the restaurant business. I would never go in the restaurant business. It's nothing but work. It's nothing but work.
Constant.
And
Yep.
that's it. And yet people think it's an easy. As one guy said to me, he says, "John, please don't say bars anymore. Say restaurants." So that's
Right.
that's the thing. But it's a it has to be good. See, now this I did consulting for a while. I'm not going to name drop, but some people in retail and some people in the hospitality, big companies. And I had a scheme once, and all I am, Roger, in addition to the activism, the corporate activism, the local government activism, all I am really is I develop information.
Okay.
And I was tested at one time, I was tooting my own horn. Looking at documents, I could find anomalies. I could look at 2,000 pages.
Okay.
So I tested well.
That's your unique ability.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I started, and one of my consulting things, I wasn't going to charge them. So there would be something that I would discover about a company or their competition. And I would present, I says, here's the information. And I did this with the Chinese the other, maybe 6 months ago. And I said, I think you've been defrauded. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, but I think you've been defrauded on a big deal. And I says, I developed the information, I know the history of this, and if you want, give me a call. They haven't called yet. But what I would do is, I started a thing where I would call up companies, private companies, whatever, very competitive businesses, restaurant businesses. I says, I found something out that you should know. Your competitor is not only poaching people from you, he's getting them to divulge your secrets. And I says, and I started saying, no fee. I'll give you everything that I have, and if it's worth something to you, you pay me. Well, guess what happened? The people in the middle spotted the information. They grabbed it. They took it. Look, what so that's what happens. But that.
Have you made a living off of that? Have you done consulting? Was that your work?
Yeah. A living is how you live, right?
Yes.
So again,
Yes,
going
of
back
course.
going back to the creative type,
Yep.
it's not going to turn anybody on. I'm only one person, so that's that. Yeah, you do make a living at it.
But why would someone hire you? so you
Oh,
could,
I would present it after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah, after the
Yes.
fact. I mean, in other words, in my corporate activism, as a shareholder, there's things that board of directors do. One of the big things is they overcompensate themselves. And you have relatively unsuccessful, particularly in the biotech field, that overcompensate themselves routinely. And without results. And they're just draining the shareholders, and they go from one company to the next. And this is I sued Sears because Eddie Lampart was busting out Sears, and that was my actions there, and we tried to get more. It was a $60 million agreed upon settlement. I think it was reduced to 30. It was reduced, but we went to arbitration with that on behalf of the Sears shareholders. Sure. Of course, $60 million didn't last long, but we did try to shore up, made some other demands that didn't go over well.
But at the end of the day, you're doing this to point out that corruption may be occurring, and you're just trying to do the right thing?
Yeah, we need a looser society. We need a much looser society in a lot of ways. What's happening to the underclass is very disturbing. Number one, they're being pumped with psychotropic drugs. Now you hear this constant clamor, mental health treatment. We can't criminalize people. Well, what's the mental health treatment? It's some guy that's going to spend, this is not Hollywood. They're not going to spend 3 hours on a couch telling their life story. Okay, you meet the diagnosis, go off with your prescriptions. Hope you don't hurt anybody. This is a tremendous affront to people. Again, I walk the streets. I look into these people's eyes. I see them. They're and what happened to them? What happened to most of these people? Most of the people you see on the street, NAFTA.
Tell me about that.
Well, the manufacturing base was given to Mexico.
Okay.
And given to China. And that's where these people's lineage was in manufacturing. Making something useful, moving up the ranks, occupying their time. And when they asked what they did, because, the service business is interesting because it's ephemeral. And you're only as good as your you're dealing a hand of blackjack. You're only as good as your smile and how congenial you are with the customer. Now, if you're in a bad mood, well, guess what? The guy that's having his big moment at your baccarat table is, that's his experience. So it's very, very different. But some of these people are not suited to the service economy, is what I'm getting. Okay. They're more service suited to a thing, and they can do a great job. And and we lost retail. And when we're losing retail in this country, people don't understand. Retail was a safe harbor for a lot of people, especially when a downturn, people lost big jobs. They did manage to get a job in retail. And
we lost retail because of Amazon?
No. In fact, there's a good book on the subject, and it's called something like The Death of Luxury or something like that. I don't know. Essentially, the productive capacity in China is so huge, particularly in the apparel business, that people have flooded the market. And the great merchants, the Neiman Marcuses, those type of people, the people that really knew their stuff. Yes, the people that would scour the earth for the best are not existent anymore. In other words, luxury brands now, they make these garish things, like what kind of, they look like graffiti. And it's like, oh, I paid like $3,000 for this T-shirt. Well, that's not their lineage, was quality and customer service. Mm-hmm. That was,
and you're saying that's gone?
It is gone. I bought a pair of espadrilles, Gucci espadrilles. This was years ago, like 30 years ago, $300. And the sole was coming off. And I took them back. Well, normally this is no problem,
right.
Right? We'll take care of it, and they weren't that old. And I said, well, glue or whatever they put on it. I'm sorry, there'll be whatever it was back then, $35. I says, I didn't buy. I bought these from Gucci. I didn't buy them from Tom McCann. So that's what happens when a brand gains popularity And when their customers become diverse, except the Japanese. Now, the Japanese are quality oriented. They'll take a garment apart right in the store, and they know quality. And that's why you mentioned creativity. Japan is the most creative place on this earth. Tokyo is. And you have people that are dedicated to whatever art they do. They'll take something apart and make it their own. They know what they're doing. They have managed to amalgamate various styles, and they're perfectionists. And
They're not cutting corners.
no, and they love it. And that's where that still to this day, that's where the creativity is. And the problem is that now with the algorithms, see, now they don't want anything coming up in a natural, organic way. And they don't want people that know how to rub nickels together, getting to the next stage, because that's valuable advice. Everybody wants to start off at the top. Everyone envisions themselves as, the next this or the next that. And, there's more to it than that. And number two, let's not forget about luck. Luck is the number one ingredient. And, the old vaudevillians used to go on the Johnny Carson show, and they say, well, Johnny, I got my lucky break. And I knew some of these people. And they would say, I got my lucky break. So they admitted that luck was
Part of it.
Yeah, because, in show business, there's a million crooners.
Mm-hmm.
There's chorus girls are a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
People that can recite a dramatic read, a dime a dozen. So, they knew what that they had been elevated,
odds,
and
right.
they want. Now you don't see that. Nobody talks about luck. It was all them. It was all their. They're a genius, and there's no luck. But I'm trying to think of somebody that's I mentioned the old timers, but I'm trying to think of somebody today that I think knows what they're doing. I'll wait. Once I was at a recording session, and we were using this. It was a demo studio. It was famous. Dick Charles. Dick Charles was a songwriter, and he had a recording studio, and it was mostly used to cut an acetate, which is a temporary record that you would use in songwriting. So everybody cut their demos. They were like Carole King, and it was a good room. It was a good sounding room. Not so much, but there was an engineer there, and it's funny. I wanted something done which was relatively easy to do because the guy wasn't making it with the guitar solo. This was a flower power type record. So I says, look, the guy's having a problem. He's collapsing on me. We need to reverse this tape with a Strawberry Fields effect, to try to. Oh, geez, this guy was adding echo, and there were still people around from the doo-wop era, and this guy was a doo-wop. He had the ducktail and everything. And, oh, geez, I can't do it. It's too much work and stuff like that. And he said, oh, by the way, I'm cutting Hendrix. We're cutting Hendrix. And I looked at him like he was nuts. I said, well, I hope you do a better job than you're doing on my records because my records stink. And sure enough, I bought the Electric Ladyland. The guy's name was Jack Adams, right? So I was in high school, and I got the Electric Ladyland. The day it came out, I ripped open the vinyl, which, by the way, there's no thrill, no streaming thrill to rip open. It's almost a religious, spiritual experience to rip open that vinyl without cutting your thumb and to get that smell of the vinyl and put it on the tape. So anyway, I looked on the credits, and he was involved with Eddie Kramer with Electric Ladyland. Yeah, so
were you a producer? What were you doing?
I was a jack of all trades. I envisioned myself a songwriter at times, and I was a producer. I was enamored with the actual. Of course, there was great producers. Phil Spector, in spite of his problems, was a great producer. The thing about the music business back then, it was a synergy. The Beatles were quite good at it. It was the clothes, it was the look, it was the photography, it was the songwriting, it was the recording. Without any of those elements, without Abbey Road or EMI, without the board, without the Studer tape recorders, without the microphones, you would have had less. Because essentially what the Beatles were, they were the Everly Brothers. I mean, that's why people passed on them 12 times. Everybody passed on them. And one of the most interesting stories that I have in the music business is Elton John. There's a guy, Dick James, who bought the Beatles music publisher. The Beatles publicly, they put their music publishing up. It was a publicly traded company for a while. And they did give George, I think, 5%. They gave the other two guys money, and that they didn't deserve, but they got it. And anyway, it became a private company after it was a public company. Dick James bought it. And he's the guy that found Elton John. So they had cut the Elton John, the complete first album with the strings and everything. You know, as you hear it, they were running around Los Angeles with the tapes. I met one of his underlings. Passed. There was 12 companies, and everybody passed on it. There's a guy that used to hang out there named Russ Regan. He used to hang out at the Continental. It's the Hyatt now, but it was called the Continental. It was Gene Autry's hotel, and the music people used to hang. And I saw the guy give the tape to Russ, and he said, give him a big package. And he said, Mr. Reagan, and the guy was Armenian, but he had a stage name. Anyway, he says, here's an album that we cut, and you can have it for free because 12 people have passed on it. So he drove to the Universal lot where he had the office. He put it on the stereo, and he had to have it, you know. But he got it for nothing.
Right.
You know, so he got $100,000, $150,000 record for nothing, and then they went to Philadelphia with it first, and they started buying the records back. And that's the big trick of show business is it's payola, and it's buying your own records and moving it up the charts. And those are the two big tricks that you need to know.
Wow. So let's move into the untold stories of Broome County.
Oh, jeepers creepers.
What do you have?
Some of them are mafia. A lot of them are mafia related.
I think my family was involved, but I don't know if I want to talk about it.
Well, what happened in Appalachian is interesting because there was a Tioga grand jury, you know, and it was primarily, you know, around here it's primarily bookmaking, that type of thing, you know. I mean, but what happened after there was a trial that was botched in Tioga County. I can't remember all of it. I can't call it up, but let's say in '58 there was a local trial. I mean, it wasn't a federal trial, but the upshot of Appalachian is that Binghamton was one of 12 places in the United States that had an organized crime task force. And they would sit there at the federal building and listen in, you know, to these conversations. I mean, you know, you think about it, it was, you know, so that was the unique thing about Binghamton was that. But the gun running with another set, with the Miami set, that's a very, very under reported story, and
that was part of the Irishman.
Oh yeah.
They showed that scene
Yeah.
where they took a truck down to Miami.
Well, and there's a guy still around, and what's interesting is we're going to see if I can tell a story here. Okay, heroin. That's all we hear about is opioids and heroin. Well, let's go back to the 70s. A guy in Owego, he's dead now. Selling trailers, you know, travel trailers, that type of stuff. At a carpeting place. Major heroin center, transshipping to Montreal, to the Montreal. You don't want to fool in Montreal. I'll tell you what. Montreal would make the Ravenite Social Club, especially now they're killing everybody up there all the time. But this was a major transshipment of heroin. And if you look at the I don't want to mention the guy's name. His son's a lawyer, but if you look at the astounding numbers, and this guy was at the various harness tracks, and he had harness horses at the time, and he would blow a tremendous amount of money. He was looking at him like, "What this guy said? Oh, it's only money, you know," and that's what it was, you know.
So when you just because I'm thinking about the listener too, when you tell a story like that, I mean, is that fact? Is that fact?
Oh, yeah.
Hard fact?
Yeah. I mean, in other words, I can point you to the news accounts of the time, but
That's pretty serious.
Yeah. Well, all crime is local, and it's interesting. The toleration of what's allowed in communities, even from north to south, is one of the the wise guy things to do here was building houses on spec, right? And getting credit from a lumberyard and then sticking the lumberyard. Well, if you do that down south, there's certain statutes that they don't call it the theft, the building materials is you can't do that, but you could do it here, you know? So that's you know.
So guys would move from one lumberyard to the next.
Yeah. I mean, so it's the I'm trying to think of the greatest. Well, here's an untold story. There used to be a nightclub where essentially the Collier Street parking lot is, called the Embassy. I had an uncle who was a very good drummer. He migrated up here from Jersey, was a bartender, and he was a drummer. In fact, his picture was on the New York Times Magazine. Some politician came to town. And he used to live on Exchange Street in the Capitol Theater. Between the Capitol Theater and the Embassy Club was showbiz. And these guys would come and spend time with him that he knew from Jersey. And Gene Krupa was up at the apartment all the time. Oh. And I always thought, this is interesting. I didn't know, I always thought the vowel on his name, I always thought Gene was an Italian, you know, and he was one of me, you know, he was one of us. He was, you know, Eastern European, and I didn't know that. And but he would stay there. These other guys, comedian Stubby K, you know, see, and it's funny about show business is there's always like 4 or 5 of a type. Like there was Woody Allen and Wally Cox, and then there was a guy named, what the heck is his name? I forgot. But there was a type, and then, you know, imitation is the serious form of flattery, so people would debate whether he stole the act. But these were, Gene was up here quite a bit, you know, and he was, the interesting thing about Gene Krupa is he was the prototype for the modern rock drummer. Everybody, Carmine of the Vanilla Fudge and Rod Stewart fame, and they all credit Dino Danelli. The best drummers were Italian, you know, it's interesting. I mean, Dino Danelli and the Rascals with the haircut and the twirling of the sticks, that was something that, you know, that drummers, you know, wanted to be. But it's funny, to drumming, to the average person, well, it's just a guy, you know, drumming, but they don't realize how hard it is and how a handful of people are good at it. There's, you know.
I could tell you have an appreciation for it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely you know, an art form, and in and of itself, because, you know, the heart and the drums and the pace of life and everything else.
Who's the best that you think has ever lived?
Well, I would. I mean, that's obviously Buddy Rich, and in fact, I heard Buddy Rich 75. In fact, he was with Sinatra in Long Beach. He was using the big band then. But
oh yeah.
I said, I got to go see the guy's foot, and it was Sinatra had canceled the concert once before, and it was like they were on the radio. Geez, Frank's going to be at Long Beach. You know, tickets are still available. And there was only a couple thousand people there. Well, I think it was like 83 or whatever, and I went and looked at Buddy's foot, you know, and I think he was 70 something at the time, you know, and. You know, it was just unbelievable. I mean, people used to take home movies of people's foot, but there's the best criteria is not who the best drummers were, or who the most, because everybody knows, you know, it's Buddy Rich, in rock it's John Bonham, but the underrated drummers, because those guys were really the drummer in the Pro Call Harem. Geez, I'm forgetting names now. Tremendous drummer.
And why do you say the foot? What is it about the foot that is it the beat that?
Well, there's various ways to, you know, the jazz guys who play flat-footed, you know, and then they came up all kinds of. It was the foot pedal. The Rogers foot pedal was the best foot pedal. It was head and shoulders above any. So you would mix and match components from the drums. The Slingerland hi-hat was the best hi-hat. So, okay. You know, and then they came up, and it got so absurd, they came up with the fiberglass drumsticks, and then there was a thing, it was a triangle, it's called a thumper, you know. But anyway, one day I'm taking drum lessons from a guy, I'm not going to, he's dead, but anyway, it wasn't the guy you're thinking of, but it was another guy. And I'm taking drum lessons, and he says, and I walked into the guy's studio. He says, you know, you're one of the best drummers that ever walked in here. I said, I am? He says, yeah, it's unbelievable. So anyway, after I finished with the guy, I couldn't clap my hands in time. But anyway, one I mean, totally. And Of course, it wasn't like today. YouTube, educates a lot of people. But one day, I bring him the Led Zeppelin album, the first Led Zeppelin album. And he says, and he's listening to it. And he says, I said, I want to learn how to do this. And he says, well, that's a double bass drum. I says, no, it isn't. He says, no, it's a double bass drum. He listen over. I says, I heard the guy in Syracuse last week. It's one bass drum. So that's
Wow.
but it's, but
You had an ear for it.
well, it was again when you're see that the period from 65 to 70 was unbelievably creative period. There's these 5-year periods. They have them in where athletes too. I mean, you had Aladar and Affirmed and Spectacular Bid. You had these great horses in a small compressed period of time. You had great jazz, and for some reason it doesn't continue. It's not evenly spaced. You've got great boxers, and it doesn't even out. I don't know why, but
Interesting. If you were a young entrepreneur and you were living here right now, would you stay?
yeah, I probably would, because how would I guess you could if you went. Well, first of all, the cold calls are dead. So when I was in the music business, you could virtually meet with anybody. I had a lawyer who was Fleetwood Mac's lawyer. So if I couldn't get in on my own,
Yeah.
and I would have acts, and I'd sit there on the phone, and you try everything. You try studio. You say, well, let me put you in live. Maybe we can get some guy, some record executive, in a weak willed moment. You'll be in his office. You sound okay. So I would line up live auditions, and I would sit there, and I would have to come up with appointments with people, and I shot for the top people, because there's people I didn't want to talk to because I felt they wouldn't. And lo and behold, you would get these appointments, and some of the things that were funny. Once I was presenting, there's still some music guys around. Don Ellis, he was with a musician. He had his own records, a jazz guy. So I bring these two guys from Binghamton to play, and I never told them this story. And I was auditioning, and I booked them into the Troubadour, and so they still had a lot of Binghamton in them, and I said, please don't let me do the talking. So they played for some big wigs, and one my attorney was there. Said, he's going to sign him on the spot. I feel it. I said, well, let's hope so. So anyway, we get out of an audition, and I stayed with the guy. Well, this guy gave me such a dressing down; it was unbelievable. These guys can't sing, they can't play. What are you trying to do to me? So he thought it was, he was just affronted. He
Were they bad?
Huh? Well, he said, his comment was, one guy can sing a little bit, they both can't play, and one guy can't sing at all. So this is the Mitch Miller type of guy.
Yeah.
This was thing. But so the guys asked me, how are we doing? I'm walking out like this, So it's a thing. But the cold calling in a lot of businesses is gone because people are locked in towers, they're locked in office buildings. They don't want to hear it. They're not in touch with the street. So that's the problem. For example, if you want to find musical talent, you've got to go into clubs that you don't want to go into. And I give people a lot of credit. So you right now, there's probably some guy with a sketch pad in Binghamton that has some great ideas that doesn't know what to do. Maybe he's going to. There's some person that can sing that doesn't think they can sing, because ironically, the thing about singers is the worst ones come to the forefront. It's always they're willing to embarrass themselves. But I'd stay in Binghamton because I don't think. The other towns are very, very mean and aggressive. You'd have to rent you sleep in like a coffin, one of these cubes, but nobody wants to hear it. So I don't know. Now, you can get a reading fast. For example, if you're a comedian, you can get a reading fast. And it's just that, Howie Mandel, one weekend, and he was, the next thing they had him on, one weekend from Toronto, he was there, and the next week he was on St. Elsewhere. So he didn't have to pay his dues. And And the problem with comedy is they'll steal your act. If I go right now, I will go right now, and I've had this. I write gags for disc jockeys, and they accept them, and they take them on. Big guys, like LA guys. And if I go to the comedy store or whatever club's there, within 48 hours they'll be on late night TV. Those gags will be on because people steal. Now music you can steal 8 bars legally.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. So when you get stuck, when you were a songwriter making $50 and getting stuck, you would always start with what's on the charts. So that's why, like, you ever hear "Steal Away" Robbie Dupree and "What a Fool Believes," that's why you get that, and that type of stuff.
Interesting.
You asked me the untold stories of, and these are not untold stories, but these people, they're dead. They destroyed Broome County more than one was P.J. Casella, who was president of Endicott Johnson. In fact, $30 million in the pension fund. And he got a better job. He went with a watch company after that, Elgin Watch. He was an instrumental, bad omen of things to come. And then Edwin L. Crawford. Edwin L. Crawford gave us the charter form of government. Took us from the Board of Supervisors to a county executive and a county legislature. Board of Supervisors, most predominant form of government in New York State, in the United States. It's the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. It's the
Still to this day.
Yeah. It's the Shenango. Ed hatched this up. And it was hatched in Long Island at the same time. That charter form of government was the wave of the future. Well, it created political class jobs. It created a legislature. It created an executive. It created, a couple $1 million worth of political positions. How the Board of Supervisors is that your local guys that you already elect, your town supervisors, your mayors, your village, they're on the Board of Supervisors. They run the county. So they go in once a month and run the county for you. You've already voted for them. You're already paying them. You've already elected them.
I see.
And after he got and he tried 3 times with the resolution. People wouldn't go for it. They saw it through. It defeated at the polls.
It was on the ballot?
Yeah, 3 times. 4th time was a charm.
What year about?
This is 69, 70 in there.
Okay.
And then he got unceremoniously defeated. And I had for Congress and for county executive, and then went to Albany to form a trade group, a lobby group, the New York State Association of Counties. And he ended up on Cape Cod with this scheme. But it's a bad form of government. So
why wouldn't the leaders recognize that and turn it back the way it was?
Well, the thinking was in the 70s, we had 250,000 people. We had IBM. The thinking was that we were going to be the Nassau of the North, that some way, somehow, that people were going to stay here, and people had 6 or 8 children, and we were going to have 500,000 people. That was the thinking behind it.
It didn't happen.
No, it didn't. Wow. And it's sad to me because you can drive, right? And you can see pretty country, and you say, well, why can't Microsoft come here? I mean, look at why can't somebody come here? And the reason is that the good qualities of life are already firmly established elsewhere, and the people can afford it. So, 2, 3, 5, 10 million, you name it, they can afford it. They're living there. Now, the population may compress. There's a new Madrid fault. I mean, people may be running for their lives. We don't know. But the thing is, can we even accommodate? Can the city of Binghamton accommodate 10,000 additional people right now?
I don't know.
Where are they going to live?
Right.
And one of my things was always, home building is another industry that we have not participated in. Now, the mayors and the county executives, they should have been, during this period they should have been on the phone with all the major publicly traded home builders saying, we'll clear some ground. Can you come in? Can you do something for us? Because you do need to replace the housing.
And we even see it in in apartment living. There's very few choices, here. And there's extreme or, one extreme or the other.
Well, and that's the thing. If you go to Dallas, you'll see miles and miles of, apartments that are reasonably priced that are new.
Right.
So here,
and it may attract students to stay or to bring some more young professionals here.
yeah.
I mean, housing itself it's
Well, we've
a
got
deterrent.
we've got to watch how we sell the area. We can't oversell it. We have to say that there are drawbacks here, and if you start with honesty, you'll be better off. Now, you've got, scientific fraud is a term that's used when people, Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes or Norton, or whatever her name, somebody wears they do a TED Talk and they wear a black turtleneck and all of a sudden they got, like if I was to do a TED Talk, I mean, can you imagine that? People would leave. It'd be the end of TED Talks. Unfortunately, you're accommodating me here. But, we've got to watch this. There's an entrepreneur that's got some of this government funding here in upstate, and she's spending the money on personal expenditures. So people don't, again, it goes back to what kind of person do you want in public office? What kind of person do you want as an entrepreneur? You want somebody that can live within his means. You don't want anybody with delusions of grandeur, because then they've got to do a deal to be corrupt. I don't know. The famous controversial line is Utica was the butt of jokes in the 60s. It was a running gag on Dick Cavett. So much so that Dick Cavett invited the mayor of Utica to be on the program. And they came with good nature. And right after that, Mayor Hanna up there, he hit national news when he told the graduating class up there to leave town. I mean, this was in the 70s or something. So this was controversial. I mean, nobody's waiting. I mean, it's like these guys from Endicott's. They would have fantasies about going back to Italy, and they would make some money here. And some of them did.
Right.
Like Italy, we're waiting for this guy from Endicott to come and tell us what we're doing wrong here, we're not draining the pasta properly. Well, they came back. Look, there's no place like the United States of America. Mm-hmm. There's no place like it. And this is pretty country up here, although, we're burning a lot of land. That's distressing. And we don't keep things up enough. And, it's a great area. I want to make it better. And I want to make it better by making people accountable. Because right now we don't have a lot of journalism. We don't have a lot of information being exchanged. And if some guy's going to take $1.3 million salary, he deserves to be held accountable, especially if it's a public institution, like a university or a publicly a hospital, a public hospital. Mm-hmm. So it's not asking too much. I think, but we need to loosen things up. We do need to loosen things up. We need to free up things. And what I don't like is people are they're looking very downtrodden here. They're looking like very, very, I don't know how we raise their spirits. Some of it's religion. We've got to, and some of it's just interaction with these people. They're I mean, some people aren't so nice. They'll take you on, and you try to avoid them. But when you walk the streets, you see a different thing, and it's distressing. But we need to, and we got great entrepreneurs. Let me name a couple of them. Mark Iannotti, seat of the pants guy, great guy. I mentioned his name at the IDA because he made an ethical disclosure that he didn't have to make. He put down on his form, I contributed to political campaigns, which the other people, and it wasn't required. An unbelievable creative business guy. And it's too bad. It's too bad that the political forces didn't recognize his natural ability and really get behind him. Marchuskas are another people. Unbelievably great people, creative people. They know what they're doing. And perhaps people are jealous of their success. I don't know. I mean, it's astounding. I mean, 1 minute these guys are looking to do some, they're 8 young kids, 18, 20 years old. They're doing some home repair or something, and then, and you close your eyes, you go to sleep, and they're big wheels. Right. So they're great people, and but unfortunately, some of the people with lesser ability are not the thing, And
what do you think about the guys that started the Colonial? Those young guys.
I don't know them. I mean, I remember it as the Embers and the Home Dairy, so that's my That's my thing.
Well, they did the Colonial, they did Dos Rios. Now they're back around near the arena. They're putting another place. So what I love about it is they're taking action. They're
Yeah.
trying things. They're and they have a level of standard, like a Mark Unati. When he does something, he does it well.
Yes.
You know, like Marchusco's, they do it well, and that's nice to see. And it's good to see that continue.
Yeah, yeah. You know, they're talented people. I mean, I will recognize talent when I see it. You know, and I will comment on something that's well done. It's not all gloom and doom.
Right.
You know?
I was going to say, have you ever thought about running for office?
I did. I ran, the first time I ran in '74. I ran for county legislature, and I'll tell you what, I ran in a Republican primary, and I did well enough I was behind the thing, but the first ward was merged into this district, and I was on the west side. So, and I didn't campaign at all. I was just an alternative, and my thing was, well, Nixon just took a powder, so I said, they'll go for anything. So that's why I did run on one issue that I wanted to think. But what happened was on that one, Doris Brooks was the head of the Republican Party, and I said to my mother, take me down there. I'm going to see if I can run for office, and if they accommodate me, I'm not interested in it. But if they put up roadblocks, I want to see how fixed this is. Again, doing some research. So I go, she was glad to see me. She embraced me. She said, oh, this is great, And I was running against a mainline guy in a primary, that was a golden boy. And she said, oh, that's great, Well, when the returns came in, I actually won a couple of precincts, and or whatever they are, and polling places, and the frowns. But anyway, that poor guy, and I feel bad about it now. He was going to be groomed for, his father was in the state assembly, and his mother was too, I think. And he was and I felt bad about it. I really did after that, because I said, I may have altered this guy's course, and he probably would have been a better, but I did, and I ran on the Green Party for city council.
When was that?
This was in 1999,
Okay.
and I did actually carry some, polling places, but I'd be a good public official, because you have to solve problems, and you have to, I once advocated that when they were making them, that the Binghamton Police Department get Saabs. The Vale Police Department had Saabs. They worked a deal with Saab, front wheel drive. But you have to have things that are little things that people see readily, that aren't cookie cutter things, and that people say, oh, wow, look at that. And even if it's crazy people on the street, you have to allow that. Now you have to. The most distressing thing, we're losing our gathering places. We're losing our social. Once upon a time, you'd run into people at the video store, right? So that was a good place to see them, especially if they had a tape that was hot. You say, geez, I knew that guy was a pervert. But you would see people at the videos. Now you're limited to
Grocery store.
Grocery store,
Yep.
Athletics. You may run into athletics.
Yeah.
Some show or something. But you don't have that mingling where you can unexpectedly run into people, and we're losing those spots. And those spots are vital.
Yeah.
They're really necessary for socialization. The mall. You think so. I don't know, but I'm encouraged if people respond. But the problem is they're kicking the can down the road, and they're going status quo all the way, and that's no way. And I think the university's got to loosen up a little bit. The university has got to say, we can't solve all the problems here, and they're already backtracking from the 20,000
Yeah.
and 20. They're already backtracking. So, I worry about overpromising, plus the fact that, we haven't had a big recession yet. And boy, when that recession hits, and I don't, hospitality takes a hit. This first one's going, but it's a more interesting place. It's definitely. I'm the oldest guy in town now. I'm the oldest guy that's walking around. So, but we need more people like me. That's what the mayor of Johnson City said. He said it wouldn't be the same if more people were like you. So I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. What's going to happen next year with the presidential race? What's your prediction?
Well, anything can happen with Trump. It seems to be a shoo-in to me. But there's many things that can happen. I think he's full of surprises. I think you could see him dump Pence. I think you could see, we need, look, if we had the parliamentary system, our political problems would be over with, because there'd be hard left, medium left, there'd be hard right, medium right, country club Republicans, whatever you want to call them, and we'd all blend together in parliamentary. People would have minority seats, they would, people that were extremists would have a say somewhat, because they would probably get some, so I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the Democratic side is interesting. I would suspect that, particularly because Cuomo's tried to shut down these minor parties, I would expect Jill Stein to give it a go, but they can't get into the debates. So, again, see, this is how, there were more, when they began excluding Ralph Nader from the debates, this was the problem. I voted for, it's funny too, and those levers, see, the doing a dot is not as emotional as a lever. So you could go in and say, you could be a supporter of some guy for president, and then at the last minute with those mechanical, those curtains closing, you say, that son of a, and you can get them. And that was the beauty of that. So a lot of times I ended up voting for people, but I'm perfectly satisfied with Trump. I wanted to name Main Street in Binghamton after him. Hit the New York Times, that one there. And one reporter everybody covered it, was covered in some places outside. And one reporter, she's not there anymore, press, it's not news, it's not news, it's not news. And then 2 weeks later, it was in the New York Times magazine.
That's great. Well, John, this has been fun. I've learned a lot. I hope people see you for who you are. And that is someone that you could talk to, and not someone you need to shun. Mm-hmm. And yes, you do create controversy. I did want to ask you real quickly about social media. Mm-hmm. I see you're using Twitter. You're on there a lot. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? What do you think about social media?
Not bad. I was shadow banned for a while. There was a Catholic, I had more followers, a Catholic priest, James Martin, he's a Jesuit. He's a very liberal, we'll leave it at that. But we were getting into, and I'm banned by a lot of people. I'm banned by school districts. I'm banned by the mayor of Ithaca. I'm banned by the state of Fred Extra.
Banned from what?
From Twitter. They banned me from the exchange of ideas on Twitter. They banned me from their accounts or their government accounts. And that, of course, is in the Trump case and is in the Alexandria case. You can't ban people from Twitter. It's established law. And yet they have done that. And I don't criticize their mother. I don't use obscene language. I just ask them about something. And, Donna Laparta, to her credit, Mayor David, Jason Garner, they all take it because they can't ban me anyway. They know they can't. They obviously conferred with somebody. But Fred Akshar doesn't ban me. But Twitter's interesting. I'm getting into it more. I don't really know what I'm doing, but what's interesting is you get 2 minutes on a video, but on the live, if you go live thing, you can. So that's kind of nice. Maybe it'll be what I view it as is just, a lot of times I don't comment on stuff. I just put it out there because I want people to draw their own conclusions, and I will. I don't think you have to hide what your bent is. In other words, I don't. The controversy at the jail. They're saying there's all these deaths, but to my knowledge, there's not an attorney of note that is pursuing wrongful death actions. So, you've got to view it as being suspect. But I love to give it back to protesters. I had a blast at the Columbus Day Parade because I was like a first responder, I was giving it back to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. These people want to control the debate. And that's not going to do it with me. They're not going to control the bait. I'm a nice guy. I think I'll do good for this community yet. And I think it'll be the happiest day when I'm in the obituaries. I'll tell you what, there'll be a part. They may it'll be like a Bourbon Street, on Shrove Tuesday or whatever. They'll really celebrate. We'll sing the Saints Go Marching In. But
what's your biggest downfall?
Well, I passed on a lot of successful things. That's another story entirely. And you want to hear one? I'll give you one. Starbucks. There were about 4. I was in Seattle, and I overheard a conversation that someday they were going to go public. This was in the late 80s. So I thought, well, this is going to be. See, sometimes what happens is in areas that have a successful company like Microsoft, when other local stocks go in, that part of that money that people have made them, I would say, well, this is a local thing, and it happened in San Diego. I once said I'm going to buy every stock in the San Diego newspaper. Equally, there's about 18 of them, because one of them's going to pan out, and I don't know which one. But anyway, I wrote Howard Schultz a letter, and that was it. Didn't hear it. A couple years later, I get a package, and it said, John, we're going public. Here's the prospectus. And I said, well, wait a minute. This guy's really on the ball. The fact that I just sent him a card like 2 years ago, and he kept the correspondence. And he said, But I looked at the prospectus, and at the time, they had went into Albertsons or some supermarket chain. They had 60 units.
Do you remember about the year?
Oh, this was 92.
Okay.
And I looked at the prospectus. They had listed as a problematic factor that they shut down 60 things in Albertsons. And then I talked to some other people, and I didn't realize how rapidly they were going to expand. They didn't share that, and they were backtracking a little bit in California. And then I was up in San Mateo, and I saw this sign, and it was out in front of McDonald's, and it said espresso. And they had a full-blown espresso. It wasn't part of it was a franchisee doing it on his own. And then I went to a Walmart, and then of course, Seattle, Nordstrom's, and they had espresso. And I thought their coffee was better than Starbucks. And I said, everybody and their brother, this is too easy to copy, But then you get back to the Bill Gates theory on Walmart. Why didn't somebody stop them? And nobody stopped them. Yeah. And that was a regret. Another one, a brief story. In Switzerland in 1982, in Lugano, which is, is that, well, it's near Lugano there, right? So is that the last part? I can't remember. Guy shows me Swatch watches. And he says, the idea here is we're taking on the Japanese. We're going to reclaim our territory. And I looked at him, and those ones that I looked at were uglier. I said, you're not going to take on Seiko. Will you please forget about it? Pack up your case and go. There is no way that you're going to take it. So there's two for you. There's two. But I got a hot tip for you, Roger. I'll share it to you after the game.
Okay. Well, John, thanks for your time. This has been great. I have one last question I'd like to ask every guest, and that is, at the end of the day, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for?
I don't. There's probably nobody that's going to remember me, I would very much, before I die, and I'm working on it now, and I have some citations. I would like to have a big case on the corporate side that's cited in other cases. And 2 people I'm jealous of, I mentioned them. Mark Yanati had that groundbreaking case, which he could have parlayed. And Jack Sheehan, my old buddy from City Council, has the #1 cited case for freedom of information law. It's called Sheehan versus the City of Syracuse. So someday, I guess my legacy would be, I have some in the state of Delaware. Cases are cited. You never know how. But I guess that would be my legacy, that I'm in law books, in case law, in the state of Delaware and other places, for corporate activism. So, to think that some young student has got to study Solak versus Paylocity or some other case, that makes me feel good, So that's probably my legacy, but maybe my legacy is yet to come, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be here. The older you get, the more you appreciate life, and you know, if you have health challenges, you have this epiphany. But I would like this area to appreciate wisdom when it's offered, appreciate making the same mistakes over and over again. But I don't have any. I'm probably going to be buried in the town of Dickinson, and I'll tell you why. They have a cemetery over there,
Right.
and they're the cheapest in town. They're $500. So that's where I'm going to end up, and then I'm going to go to those meetings, and I'm going to identify myself, John Solak, property owner in the town of Dickinson. So that's where I'm going to end up, and maybe you know, if we could get the last rites in, we'll be a thing. Well, Roger, I'd like to thank you. I said I felt that this might be your last program.
I don't think it's going to be. I think it was great. And again, we're all about giving people a voice. And really, I mean, you said it earlier when you gave that example of the rich man in the car looking out at the guy on the street. People are people, and I think people need to be a little bit more courteous to people in general. And I respect you for what you do and who you are. And hey, you know what? We did this, and let's do it again.
All creatures, great and small, and isn't it amazing? In the Lord's eyes, we're all. You know, it's these tremendous accomplishments that people have, and all the dough and everything else. And at the end of the day, we're going to be judged on factors that have nothing to do with that.
That's right.
So our hearts. So yeah.
That's right. John Solak, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to American Real. Be sure to visit our website, AmericanReal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. And speaking of podcasting, our next course will be starting soon. So if you're interested in launching your own podcast, join me and Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.